We have a pretty packed agenda as we usually do, but this is our monthly Dorado Hills Community Council meeting for the month of November. We have guest speakers and we'll get into that, but I'd like to start out by doing a roll call of the leadership team. And so if each of the members of the leadership team up here present would identify themselves and just tell us what their area of responsibility is. So Chief Lilly, I'll share with you on the board down this way.
Okay, I'm Michael Lilienthal, Deputy Chief of the Dorado Hills Fire Department. I represent the Public Safety Group, and I try to network community problems with either the sheriff or the CHP or the fire department, try to help resolve any issues anybody has.
Awesome. I'm John Davey. I'm the chair of the Dorado Hills APAC, and we look at development projects proposed in Dorado Hills and provide resident input, resident feedback to the process.
I'm Richard Ross. I am good governance, and it's kind of the how and why and what is happening in government. And this is working for us.
I'm John Heidel, District 1 Supervisor.
I'm Glenn Krakow, Vice Chair of the Community and Economic Development Advisory.
I'm Cindy Munch. I'm Supervisor Heidal's assistant, and I do community information and outreach for the Community Council.
And I'm John Daney. I'm the District 1 Planning Commissioner.
Very good. So the other thing we'd like to do is recognize those volunteers who are part of the District 1 commissions or committee members who are here. And I saw Raylene Nunn, she's back with us, and I think Wendy Mae Davis is here as well. And who else? You see anybody else, Cindy?
John?
Yeah, John Rassler.
El Dorado County Ombudsman?
Yes.
Or all of El Dorado County?
Okay. And Raylene, you want to just tell us what your role is, and then likewise, Wendy, if you tell us, just let people know.
I'm Commissioner on Commission on Aging, and we are Commission of 15 individuals, representatives from Section 7 County, and we are there to work on and hope to be an advocate for the senior population.
Okay.
And I am one of our directors of our County Assessor Appeals Board, and I help you feel good about the taxes you pay for your property.
Love it, every year. Okay, thank you for that. So, without any further discussion, let's move on to item 2, adoption of the regular meeting agenda. Is there anybody on the leadership team who would like to propose any changes to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we're going to accept it as adopted. That takes us to item 3, public comment. This is the portion of the meeting that we would like to encourage anyone from the public who would like to address a topic that's not on tonight's agenda to please come to the microphone, voluntarily identify yourself, and then share with us your thoughts, your ideas, your questions, whatever they may be, on items that aren't on tonight's agenda. So, looks like John is going to step up.
John Rassler, resident of Four Seasons 55 and over community, also the chairman of the Four Seasons Civic League, and vice chair of the El Dorado Hills Area Planning Advisory Committee. I would like this evening to thank our fire department for providing a wonderful service for the residents at Four Seasons by changing our batteries in our smoke detectors, giving out 127 new smoke detectors, and I can't remember how many carbon monoxide detectors, so I do want to thank the fire department for that wonderful outreach. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Those are services that a lot of people don't recognize, so thank you for recognizing that. Anyone else on the subject? Wayne?
Wayne Howe, been here longer than anybody. John, I just wanted to say publicly, I sent you an email or a board email. Please support Shiva Frieson's motion to have the Central El Dorado Hills plan hearings down here in El Dorado Hills so the public can have a better opportunity to express their views, and we appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. And so John, I think, might get into explaining what's on the Planning Commission agenda and some of the items, and I know John will also be talking to it relative to Central El Dorado Hills, but that's what the request is about. So we'll get into a little bit more discussion on that when we get further into the agenda. So thank you for that. Anyone else? Public comment? Okay, seeing none, then it's time for our guest speakers, and I would like to recognize tonight's guest speakers, which is Vicki Sanders from our El Dorado County Parks and Recreation Department, the Parks Manager. So Vicki, you are over here. And there's one thing we need to do first. Let me go over here. Bring her up. We have the pleasure of celebrating Vicky's birthday tonight. So she tried to keep it a secret from all of us. But secrets are hard to keep at the county because the word gets around. So as a token gesture and celebration of your birthday and coming out to a public meeting, come on, Vicky, you gotta have better life than that. But anyway, we'd like to present you with these flowers. I'm gonna leave them up here. When you come up and speak, you can take it. Yeah, come up and get them. So thanks to Cindy's help for making sure this all happened, right? But congratulations and happy birthday. Now, do you want us to sing to you?
No.
Very good. And then also we have Wayne Lowry as a co-guest speaker because Wayne recently joined our Parks and Recreation Commission as the District 1 representative. I'm sure many of you know Wayne has a long history of El Dorado Hills as our general manager of the El Dorado Community Services District, serving on the board of directors. And what we're finding, there's a lot of good synergy with Wayne's experience and what the needs are at the county. I'm sure in terms of sharing ideas and stuff. And that's what they're here to talk a little bit about is some of the projects that are being proposed by the CSD and the county jointly to provide services, including a new 200-acre approximate park is the goal, that's the vision. So I think they're going to talk about that. And then some other things that are happening in terms of plans in El Dorado Hills. And so the two of them are very able presenters on this subject because they have a lot of history from both of them. So with that, I welcome you to come forward, use the microphone here, and share your ideas with us.
El Dorado County Parks Manager. I'd like to give you just a brief overview as to what we do at the county, what we are and what we are not. We at the county offer infrastructure and facilities in the unincorporated areas, so you don't see a lot of county services so much down in your area down here because you have a community services district. We do not offer any kind of programming, so we do not offer league sports, we don't offer basket weaving, yoga classes, none of that. That is all provided by your cities or your CSDs. So we do county parks. We have 4 parks. We have one in Henningsen Lotus Park down in Lotus. We have one in Bradford Park, which is in Motherlode and Shingle Springs. We have Pioneer Park out in South County. And we have Forebay Park up in Pollock Pines. Those facilities do have places that you can rent, so there are pavilions that are rented for various different events. There's little leagues, there's soccer, but we don't offer those sports, the leagues. Come rent the fields from us and they do the programming. Some of the other things that we do which make us extremely unique, I feel, in El Dorado County, as many of you know, our natural resources is what we really have in El Dorado County that's a big draw to the public. So we also do the South Fork of the American River. So I manage commercial whitewater rafting on the South Fork. And we do the Rubicon Trail, which is an extreme 4-wheel drive trail up in the Crystal Basin. So we do maintenance of that trail and education. So we do a lot of the extreme sports, but it's done where we might manage the natural resources, but we do not offer any program as far as any training. We don't tell you how to run the Rubicon Trail. I brought some educational materials in the back for the Rubicon Trail. We don't tell you how to raft the river. We do provide education as they're putting in, such as on the river, but then it's at your own risk. So once they're on the water, they're on their own. And they are extreme sports, as many of you, I'm sure if you've lived in the county long enough, you've seen the deaths that we've had on the river and on the Rubicon. So it's an at your own risk. Extreme sports is what we have to offer up here in the county, and that's what brings a lot of the draw. The Rubicon Trail, we don't have an economic analysis on the river yet. We did one on the Rubicon Trail, and the Rubicon Trail itself brings $57 million to the county, to the state annually, and $16 million to El Dorado County annually, because we get so many tourists from all over the world that come to run the Rubicon Trail. And when they come out, they go out in Tahoe and they end up in South Lake. So we offer a lot of really unique opportunities. The Parks Department was taken apart many years ago, and I got the wonderful job of putting it all back together. So it's been interesting, at least. One of the parks was Bass Lake Park, and Wayne will talk to you a little bit about that too. But we had 41 acres on Bass Lake, and we've been working with the CSD One of the things that I wanted to accomplish as I came in as the manager was to get rid of these properties that we've had on the books for like 20 years, and the county has never done anything with those properties, which gives a false impression to the constituents is that you're going to get a park and we never had done anything with it. So we've been collaborating with the CSD on Bass Lake. There's another parcel down here that I don't have a lot of information on, but it's one that's been on my radar for a long time. It's Parson Creek. It is adjacent to the rail corridor. I also have the 26 miles of rail corridor that start right at the county line and go on up to Missouri Flat Road. Where this 30 acres is, it was was a development agreement with the developer, but it's since expired. The reason that I keep looking at it is because it's a great connection for the senior housing there that Lenora Homes has. It goes back right into the corridor, and it would get people right onto the rail corridor and into Folsom. So to me, it would be a great benefit for walking and for hiking and just for bicycles. So I think it's a great connection that I don't want to lose. So we've been watching that one there, so that would bring a service to this area. That's about all that I really have in your area, but we offer sites. But they're all challenging. We don't have a lot of staff. I have 3 staff members is all that I have. We're looking at a 40-acre piece around Charles Brown School above the Pleasant Valley to build a sports complex. I've submitted some grants to the state for the sports complex. There was $8.5 million applied for, so of course I applied for all of that. I have a site visit tomorrow. We're in the running, but we hope we can develop a sports complex for the county because we don't have one, especially up in that area. So we also have South Lake Tahoe is in my jurisdiction too. But we don't have facilities up there either. We do bike trails up there, and those are managed by the Department of Transportation, and we work with the city of South Lake Tahoe because we do have a 56-acre piece up there that we collaborate with the city on. So those are the pieces that I have.
Ms. Sanders, I hate to ask you this on your birthday. I hope it's not too hard of a question. Given the numbers that you've provided us, may I ask why we only get to keep about 1/5 of the money that comes from our waterways here locally?
You got me. I don't know.
Sorry.
Nope.
I'll ask somebody else to.
Yeah, the only money that we get off of the river, we get $2 per person as the commercial rafting company that run down the river, and that's what I need to support my program with, is with that rate. So that's the only money that I get in as a county program.
The 60 million is tourism and that kind of thing, staying in hotels, restaurants,
And our budget, my budget is extremely small. Like I said, I only have 3 employees. The river program is completely self-sufficient, so it comes from commercial rafting company fees. The Rubicon Trail comes from grants from the state OHV, and the matching dollars usually come from volunteers, from in-kind materials. There is some SMUD dollars that I've used, and in lieu, green sticker in lieu dollars. So it's also a self-supporting program that does not use general fund. And I'm able to actually, from like my Rubicon grants, I'm able to get some administrative fees recovered, which helps offset my admin. So I have a very lean budget. I don't have a lot that I operate. I don't manage actually the operations and maintenance of the parks. So I'm just renting, and I get to take all the complaints. So that's usually my role. So, and like I said, I put the Rubicon bandanas back there. We're in the process of trying to develop something similar for the river because I see it as a large hole in our river program, because I don't feel that we're educating the public enough. So I'm just getting ready to revamp that. This was out of we had a clean up an abatement order on the Rubicon back in 2009. We got out of it in 2014, and one of the things was we had to educate the public on proper use of the trail. So we came up with this bandana campaign, which has been 10 years now and extremely popular for many people all over the world. They continue to call me and say, could you just send me that one? I didn't get here this year. Could you send me another one? So they become quite popular, and they don't become garbage. So that's why we continue to use them, and they're funded by the state. So any other questions?
I have a question. I'm going to use the microphone because I'm hard of hearing, and I wonder how many other people here are also hard of hearing.
What's that?
What you say? For about 13 years now, I'm a bicycle rider. And for 13 years now, I've looked at the railroad track that goes from In-N-Out Burger and goes up into the county. And I know people have been trying to get a bike trail either on that railroad bed or adjacent to the railroad bed. Now, Heritage 2, the new development, almost touches that railroad bed. It must be maybe 300, 400 feet from it, and they have a bike trail. Do you plan sometime in the future to use any of that land that I think you said now, which I didn't realize that you had, along that area so that we can use that for a bike and pedestrian path?
Yeah, we could absolutely do that. What we have is the corridor varies in width. It goes from 33 feet from center line to 200 feet, so it just depends on where you are. The corridor goes in and out. In that area, we do have right now permits to do a natural trail on one side, and the plan is to try to get a paved trail on the other side. Of course, we do have several spots where the cuts and fills are different and the bridges, so we do have some complicated areas. So it depends on where this would connect. I believe where you're at, you only have one bridge, which is Carson Creek. So it's just making sure we can get through that area and over the bridge, because we have excursion rail that runs on that lower section. And if they ever bring full-size trains in, we can't put our bicyclists on the same track as a full-size train. So we have to kind of go cautiously. But I think there's enough width in the area that you're speaking of that we could get a paved trail.
Well, I want to tell you, I've looked at those tracks, and I've sent pictures of those tracks to the Federal Department of Transportation, and they said, we hope they don't run anything more than 5 miles an hour on those rails. They're over 100 years old. That's number one. Number two, you can run a bicycle path close to a train if you put up a fence.
Yes, we can. And we've now, as of last week, we just paved a Class 1 bike path from Missouri Flat Road to the town of El Dorado, which is adjacent to the tracks.
See, but in my mind, they're all in the wrong place. All of your people live down here in El Dorado Hills. And we need some kind of a bike and pedestrian path that we can use to go up the hill. Okay, that's number one. And as I said before, the Heritage 2, has a bike path that's within maybe 200 to 300 feet from the tracks.
What I can do is I can look at that, because one of the things I've been talking to Department of Transportation is perhaps we don't have to go continuously. Right now we have the El Dorado Trail starts in Camino and goes all the way to the town of El Dorado. So they seem to only want to go continuously in a line, but I think we can take a break and maybe come down and do a section down here, because we're not going to be able to get it. Right now we're in the town of El Dorado, we're going to have a really difficult time getting through the cut at Greenstone and the cut there at where Red Hawk Casino is. You have that tunnel cut. We're not going to get a Class 1 bike path through there. So there's places that we have to use the corridor that makes sense for a bike path, and there's places that don't make sense. And in my opinion, we're going to have to segment it. So I can look at that and I can ask them to add.
I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
No, thank you.
I think Bill had a question. One last question, maybe for Vicki.
Sorry, John. Yeah, I'll make it quick. Yeah, hi, Vicki.
Hi there.
You mentioned, I believe, that before you came on board as the manager of the Parks and Recreation, that it was kind of in disarray, to use maybe a kind term. Could you kind of elaborate on that, and also elaborate on how you have changed that?
So it was, I believe, back in 07 or 08. The county was going through budget cuts, and so at the time they took the Department of General Services apart, and the Parks Department was in General Services. So what they did was they parted out a lot of the duties that they did. So the river program went to environmental management, and park operations went to environmental management, and maintenance went to Department of Transportation. At the time, I was an analyst in the CAO's office, and I had been in parks 20 years ago. So when they decided they wanted to put the department back together, I was the only one standing that had any kind of history with what parks was and why we had Bass Lake and why we had Pollock Pines. And so at the time, the CAO said, we need you to come back in and put this back together. So basically what since I've been there is I've been trying to, let's figure out what we're doing with these properties that we're not getting anywhere on, and either give them to somebody that can, or sell them off, do something that makes sense, and don't take on anything that we can't accomplish, because I think that it promises so many false things. Pollock Pines was promised a park so many years ago, and so much money was spent to, when I got it, it was too expensive to build, so we have to surplus the land. Well, we wasted a lot of time and a lot of money, in my opinion. So I think that we have to make smarter choices as to what we go forward with.
So 2008, 2009, the county went through a reduction in force of about 20% of the overall staff. And parks was one of the major consequences. It got zeroed out. So all of the programs at that point just went into a hiatus. And it paused for about 3 years until the economy started coming back, and then it was recreated. And that's kind of when Vicki got back involved because she had the history of it. She knew something about it before it was dissolved, basically. So it's an unfortunate circumstance, but I know a lot of public agencies had that issue with that recession, and they had lost a lot of good people, which means staffing has to be decreased and services have to be decreased, and the parks was one that was more vulnerable than a lot of other ones. So, yeah. But thanks for the question. I think that helps for people to understand how we got to where we are.
Good, well, thank you both.
Yeah. Wayne.
Okay, John said I had a couple hours, so.
Everybody bring it
We're
along.
gonna be done by 9, I'm gonna have to cut it short.
I read your script. It isn't that long. Come on.
No, but
He doesn't talk as fast as I do.
it depends on how much trouble I'm in. Yeah, I made notes because I find as I age, tend to wander off, and I could get on some subjects that we probably don't even know exist. So part of what John asked me to do was to talk a little bit about how the CSD and the county kind of work together. So I'm just going to run through a quick list of things that aren't tied just to Parks and Recreation directly, but we work with a number of departments. DOT for our bikeways and some of the trails and some of the things they're responsible for. They've already lost my notes on this thing. Where am I? Well, okay, we're going to add that. The planning department, obviously, because we have issues that require them to put conditions on development, so that we've got funding for acquisition, we've got funding for maintenance, long-term maintenance of facilities once we build them. I mean, one of the advantages the CSD has, because the county has supported the specific plan efforts since was the one north Green Valley.
North Elrod Hills specific plan.
Elrod Hills was this one.
Elrod Hills Northwest specific plan.
Okay, the Northwest plan. You know, requiring 30% of the property be open space, that there be a number of parks to standards that this CSD has proposed and the county supported to make sure we have at least 5 acres of park per 1,000 people that are going to be in new homes and so forth. So the planning department and the board of supervisors are absolutely critical for what's happened in El Dorado Hills since the late 1980s, getting this park system to what it is now. It never could have done it without those kinds of conditions and the financing that came out of it. Gosh, I wish I knew where my notes were. Virtually every department we work with, the senior center, the old fire department, that's county-owned building, and because of the cooperation between the county and the district, we have recreation programs provided there by the CSD staff. You name a department that we're somehow involved with. That was human services that we work with at that end. The planning, the county's recreation planning is tied to the general plan for the county. It's the recreation element. Within that, or as a result of that, coming down from it, the Parks Department, County Parks Department has created Parks Master Plan. They've got the River Management Plan. They've got the Rubicon Plan. They've got all kinds of management and plans in place. The Parks Plan, I finished reading that this morning, by the way. The Parks Plan was 2009, and it's really kind of out of date. Several of the things that Vicki was talking about, where things got put on hold, such as the Pollock Pines and so forth, they're all in there. It's all on that plan. But the funding and the ability for the county to make those things happen are extremely deficient. And that's not a blame, that's not a fault, because if you know much about the county, 80% of their budget's not anything they have control over. It's things that they're required to do by the state and federal funding and that kind of thing. So they're very limited in what they can fund. However, the time I've spent on the commission, which has only been since July, has been a pretty steep learning curve for me. I thought I knew a lot about the county because I've been around here for a long time and I've dealt with the county, but not with the county park system. And some of the things that I've observed that may or may not prove to be accurate, because like I said, I'm still learning. I've only made 2 out of the 4 meetings since. I'm not a very good commissioner at all. But I spent a lot of time out in the parks. I've I've been on the Rubicon Trail. I've walked the corridor from Camino all the way to Folsom on the El Dorado, where the tracks are, the Southern Pacific right-of-way, former Southern Pacific right-of-way. And Vicki has taken some of the commissioners out to see and talk about Lotus, Henry de Lotus and Chili Bar. And I've been back twice to Chili Bar with people to ask questions about that because they're trying to do some improvements there. So I'm struggling to try to understand how the county system works and where their issues are and so forth. But the things, well, probably the most positive thing I've said, and I would say this even if Vicki wasn't here, is their staff. I'm so impressed with their staff. They haven't yet, especially Vicki, has yet been able to not answer a question that I posed her, and she hits me with information that I'm surprised she even knows. Her depth of knowledge and her skill and her ability to articulate it are just supreme. Very impressed. And John, I know you know that because you were on this committee.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I have the same respect for Vicki you do. She's very good at what she does.
So thank goodness she's not getting older because I hate for her to retire.
Let's see, birthdays getting older. I guess for
I'm
women,
going the
you
other
reverse
way.
it. At some point, that's it. They reverse it. So I'll make you something.
So I understand she's been in this position since she was 12 years old, so we should be fine. But three people on staff, well, four including you, one position is vacant, so you're really working with this whole staff of three. To run what she was talking about is almost impossible. I don't know how she does it. I really don't. They're underfunded for their M&O. M&O is not totally under that. They're in their organizational structure comes out of the county exec's office.
So that's maintenance and operations for people who don't understand M&O.
Thank you, John.
That part of it.
In one department within the CAO's office is for funding parks, and the other one is to oversee the operation of parks. So you've got two different people competing for Vicki, having to answer to two different people in order to get the funding and to do the kinds of things that her boss and that structure wants her to do. Very difficult situation. I'm concerned about their capital improvement program because their parks master plan is huge. They've got deficits everywhere except regional parks, and regional parks includes Bass Lake Park, which is 41 acres. So out of the $65 positive side that they have in parks, in the regional parks, they're going to maybe lose 41 acres to the CSD. I actually this morning started thinking, well, maybe the county should keep that so it can be on their inventory so they still have something positive going, but the CSD take it over. So this is where partnerships come in. This is where relationships and so forth, long-term, can make a difference. They do get QIMI fees. If you're not familiar with that, if a development comes in, they have to provide 5 acres of park per 1,000 people that are going to be in the community is the standard. But most of that new development is in El Dorado Hills. So the CSD gets the QIMI fees. So the county gets some QIMI fees, but it's not in the thousands and thousands of dollars. They don't have any community facilities district, which is also known as a Melrose, which provides opportunity to build and maintain parks. There's no landscape and lighting assessment districts, which gives you an opportunity to maintain parks. So they've got all these parks, but they've got to rely on the county general fund, or in some rare cases, money from the state to help take care of things in a very limited fee program. And probably the thing that bothers me the most, because it was something that I was negligent in working here until about my 5th year, when we realized that we build these facilities, and someday they're going to get old. And how am I going to put a $50,000 roof on a building if I haven't put money aside to do that? There's no reserve accounts for deferred maintenance, and at some point that's going to catch them. Now, I've talked to some county staff about it, and they say, well, county will always come up with money when it's needed. But, they had a 20% reduction in staff one year because they didn't have the money. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you don't set aside some money. I mean, most of us, I hope, are doing that at home, saving and so forth. And right now, I don't know, Tani, we probably got, what, $8-9 million set aside for parking lot replacements and all those kinds of things. County zero. That's a very dangerous position to be in. Everything is too much pay as you go. one of the things the county has in their master plan is to try to provide services at all levels. Neighborhood parks for people that live within a half mile, which doesn't work out real well when you've only got 10 houses within a half mile where you might be able to park. But certainly there are areas like Diamond Springs, Cool, and Latrobe that maybe there could be some park kinds of things done. But if they focus on regional parks, and maybe community parks like 40 acres, 50 acres, up in Diamond Springs, where they can put ball fields and so forth, they'll meet some of those needs. They do partner with schools, but they don't have a lot of joint use agreements, so the schools can say, this year we don't want you using our schools because we got other plans for it. We're going to renovate the fields, whatever it might be. And so people in El Dorado Hills who enjoy sports for their kids or adults might have a school facility available in their area, but eventually something's going to happen that's going to, because there's no joint use agreement, there's no formal cooperation going on. They're very dependent on partnerships and volunteers. Rubicon Trail is a huge volunteer effort. Fortunately, the guys with their four-wheel drives, and I'm one of them, are willing to spend the time up there keeping that trail in good shape and making sure people are not dripping oil all over it, and leaving trash and using any non-bathroom facility that's convenient at the time. But it's a dangerous area for to be dependent on volunteers when you have nobody in charge of managing the volunteers, except somebody who's only got 3 staff. The extreme sports is probably one of the bigger challenges they've got. Fortunately, the state recognizes many recreation activities as being hazardous, and therefore your liability is less, depending on how you manage it. And you need somebody that understands how that works to do that. In other words, like we've got a skate park here. If you supervise a skate park, all of a sudden it becomes a high-risk activity that is not recognized as a high-risk activity. So if somebody gets hurt, the district is responsible for it. The skate park that the county has is an unsupervised park, so their liability, their exposure is not as great. You want to climb Lover's Leap with the ropes and pitons, you're on your own. You fall off of that, the county's not responsible. You drown in the river, the county's not responsible. So it's a management area that they have to worry about. Well, I don't think I'm going to go too further into that, except to say that the administrative bureaucracy at the county is probably one of the hindrances of getting some things done. Things don't move as fast as they could. Any large organization has that problem. It's not the county that's the problem, it's the fact that it's so big and has so many responsibilities. So I totally get that and don't fault them. But I think as a commissioner, it's my job to politically help push the Board of Supervisors to make parks and recreation a bigger priority. Tani, you guys don't all know Tani. I know you probably talked to this group before. She's our Parks and Planning Director for the El Dorado Hills Community Services District. She brought the plans for Bass Lake Park. Just to give you a quick overview on that, and Tani, jump in anytime you like. It's a 210-acre site, but there's 4 parcels. The original lake was owned by EID, who sold it to Rescue School District for a school site. They were unable to build a school there, so they relocated just south of the Safeway that's being constructed right now. The EID I did it again. I'm no longer part of the CSD. The CSD purchased the lake from Rescue. EID still had 15 acres below the dam where they had a maintenance yard. They're in the process of relocating that to the Latrobe wastewater treatment plant, and the CSD has an agreement to purchase that is in place. And there's 12.5 acres, I believe it is, on the west side of that piece, that parcel, that is owned by Parker Development, part of Serrano, and they are conditioned by the county to give that to the CSD, and there's a community facilities district fund in place, I'm going to say pushing $3 million to help build that particular park site. And then there's the county's 41 acres, 40 acres? 41.7
is the map I got.
41.7 according to John. So, that number's wrong, it's his fault.
It's my fault. It's the map's fault.
On the north side of the lake, and it's kind of a dog leg kind of thing that the county was gonna build a park on years ago. In fact, that's in the county's master plan. Out-of-date information now, but the direction it's going.
Yep.
And the CSD, I believe, is in negotiations on acquisition of that site, whether it's purchase or donate or partnership or wherever that ends up. Out of the 27 parks in the district, I was part of helping to build 19 of those parks. And I've never been as excited about building a park as I am about Bass Lake. That is going to be just absolutely the crown jewel for our park system in El Dorado Hills. It's got sports fields potentially on the west side, but the rest of that around the lake is an opportunity for outdoor education and recreation activities like we just don't have anywhere around this area in terms of an organized piece of property. It shows a disc golf course on there and so forth, but what a lot of us are envisioning is an opportunity for the high schools and the middle schools to use that as an education for the classrooms and the science teachers, the scouts and Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts and everybody else using that as a place where kids can learn about the outdoors and nature. A preserve, the lake was at one time used to raise bass, which were relocated to the Sierras. It was one of 3 lakes in El Dorado County that happened on. Finian and I think Cameron Park Lakes were the other 2. But this was considered the primary lake. So it's full of wildlife. It's got some challenges out there. We thought there was asbestos, and so far it looks like maybe not. But we're getting some invasive plants in the water. We're worried. I've seen deer out there. We've had a bald eagle. There's just all kinds of wildlife out there that are just sensational, and we have to approach that carefully so that we don't scare them off. You know, we don't want that to suddenly just become trees and grass and nothing else except maybe a few rattlesnakes once in a while. So the district is taking input. By the time they get all these acquisitions in place, it will probably be a couple years out before they can actually do much other than the 12.5 acres, or 12.5 point whatever it is.
12.5.
Yeah, it's 12.5.
12.5.
That's a happy yes.
I'm glad somebody else is doing it, for this. Which will probably be developed earlier, and that's a priority for the district, and I understand that. But the outdoor education part of the park is just going to be absolutely sensational. Yes?
What is the timeline for this, Wayne? Is it going to be doing in phases, or is it going to be done all at once?
I don't know the exact timeline, but I know it'll absolutely have to be done in phases. The ball fields alone, we're talking, Donnie, we're looking at $600 to $1,000 or $600 to $1 million per acre.
Right now it's running around $860,000 per acre.
Per acre, and there's 12.5 acres. So that's going to take more dollars than the district has available. I think the outdoor education part, though, is going to be something that a lot of community groups, American River Conservancy, hopefully the county will partner with that, and it doesn't have to be that expensive because we're not talking a lot of structures. I think there may be some shelters in there, and we talked about an urban farm where kids can come and learn how things grow and actually put their hands in the dirt and so forth. And those kinds of things don't have to be cost prohibitive. So those may happen faster than, say, the ball fields, which are going to take a lot of money. Yes?
What are the county's plans for the land on the old golf course? It seems to me that you're putting all your emphasis on Bass Lake, and the old golf course is something that's been around and talked about way before Bass Lake. What are the county plans for the old golf course, if any?
I only know bits and pieces, so I'll just tell you what I've heard, and it may or may not be totally accurate. Originally, Park Development proposed 15 acres on the south end of the golf course for a park. I've heard recently that it may have gone up to 16 acres. The CSD originally wanted to have the whole 100 acres, both north and south of Serrano Parkway. There were times where the discussion, and these discussions for acquisition, a lot of that occurs at closed doors because it's a negotiation thing, closed session. But I know for a while the board was talking about at least getting everything south of Serrano Parkway. There's been proposals to to split the difference and maybe take 25 acres if we can't get the 50 acres and so forth. I don't know where they are. I really don't. I know they're still talking about it.
To be specific with the county has no plan to develop parklands in that area. It'll be our community services district. And I think we're going to talk about a Central Dorado Hills specific plan project, the way it's proposed within the development agreement, some of the high level aspects of that. But the county has no plan for parkland. 41.7 acres we have. We're basically going through a acquisition process with the CSD where they want to acquire the property. The county wants to release that property to the CSD.
The property has been surplus.
Yes.
41 acres. So
Yes.
that's why it's
So it's in negotiations, which we
That's
can't
the
talk
Bass Lake
about.
property.
Yeah.
But you
Bass
know,
Lake Road.
when you talk about this and you say the county doesn't have any plans, you're taking money from a very limited general pot. And if you put it all up into Bass Lake, I'm afraid that you're going to neglect the old golf course and the land that's there, which is close to a huge population.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. Now, I'm wearing my county hat up here, and the county has no plans to develop anything down here at all that I know of.
So we can talk about what's in the development agreement and the amount of money
I just wanted to bring that
per
in.
unit and stuff. We'll get into that in the follow-on discussion. But APAC is going to review that in great detail on the 13th. But we'll hit a highlight there.
The only thing I might add, though, is that the district has the CSD has a master plan for their park system. It's about $140 million plan. New community center, multi-generational, new swimming pools, more sports fields. There's a lot of things planned, and they're nowhere close to the kind of money they need to do that. So your question's legitimate. It's a matter of prioritizing how they're going to spend that money, and that's up to the CSD board.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
Did you mention Lime scooters? Because that's probably the last thing that people would think about is trail systems and Lime scooters, but we have a challenge there too, right? Which our Parks and Recreation Commission was looking at.
The very first meeting that I attended back in July, the issue came up that Tahoe has allowed shared ride scooters where you know, for $1 an hour or whatever they charge, you can go up there and you get a scooter and you and your family can take off down the roads and the sidewalks and all the places. The state regulates Lime scooters because you're not supposed to be on sidewalks. It's considered a vehicle, it's not a pedestrian. You're supposed to have a driver's license to be able to use the scooter. But a family gets up there, they're on vacation, and dad rents 5 scooters, and the family goes out, and you got like 8-year-olds riding these things on the sidewalks. The issue that John's referring to is they rent the scooters, and then they go outside the city limits on the county trails and ride around there, and the county hasn't authorized that. And the question that's coming up is what kind of liability does the county have by not authorizing it? Should they authorize it? Does that reduce their liability, or does that create new liabilities? And this is coming at us via the Board of Supervisors over the next couple of months. I think we got an extension on it because Tahoe is now going, wait, is this a good idea or not? And they're
backpedaling. The city of South Lake Tahoe is backpedaling, I think, on their ordinance relative to it. So.
And I've been reading articles from all over the United States, the big cities that are doing this. And there's a lot of injuries and even deaths that have happened on these scooters. So we're very concerned about where we go with this. But they're also happening because you don't have to rent a scooter. You can bring your own scooters in and go down and do these same kinds of things. So it's, how do you control it?
But the helmet laws are the other thing. So
And the
at the
helmet
age
laws,
of 18, you have to wear a helmet. Well, how are you going to enforce that, right? Kid gets a scooter that dad rents, and maybe our CHP can help us answer helmet because it takes a lot of people out looking at what's going on.
So they put CHP on scooters and get them out there. A little light on the front. You have mine. So anyway, any other questions?
Did you have a comment on scooters just while we're on this? The CHP has to deal with that locally or only in Tahoe, or do you get it?
Well, California, the first word in our name. So it's it is a statewide issue, and it's just if you could possibly come to wrap your mind around the scooter and electric bicycle laws that are coming out, you deserve a doctorate. It is the most complicated laws based on wattage, speed, everything. So what kind of vehicle it is, it's very complex. So I hope under the Capitol Dome they'll streamline some things, but That's just part of the things that we have to deal with.
Got it.
Is what vehicle is that?
Yeah.
What is that? That's the biggest question. As long as, and then once we can define what that vehicle is, because you may see something that looks like a Vespa scooter driving down your street, that's under 300 watts power, but it has a deck that somebody can stand on. No vehicle registration is required, although it does have lights and turn signals and everything. He doesn't have to wear a motorcycle helmet, just a bicycle helmet, and they do have to have a driver's license, and not even a helmet if they're over 16. So it's complicated.
Yeah.
Very complicated.
Okay.
Very complicated.
Without belaboring it, that's one of the things the county is right now trying to evaluate, but you can only look at today's picture because we don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 years as these things become more and more popular and people buy them for their own use as opposed to just renting them because they are a convenient way of transportation.
Yeah.
Particularly if you have gridlock on the streets, you can get on the sidewalk, but you have to watch out for the pedestrian.
Yeah.
Not everybody does that.
And if we look at the newly appointed Department of Transportation Director for the state, multimodal transportation is the focus of his regime right now. So that is a part of it. Yep.
And Tahoe is mostly a recreational use, but you've been to other cities in San Diego, San Francisco, they're getting to work, they're commuting with these things. It's going to be very complicated. I don't envy your job at all.
Then we have things like SBTC, we're trying to keep the motorbikes out of and that sort of thing, and now you got a scooter, which is a different category.
SBTC is the
Sacramento Classical Transportation Corridor, which is what Vicki was talking about. That's the old rail tracks. John was referring to a bike trail. SBTC, there's a separate JPA that controls the SBTC administration, but the county has responsibility for parks and trails development within our boundaries within our county. So.
You know, I just wanted to say, electric assisted bicycles are becoming extremely popular.
Mm-hmm.
And I see them along the American River Trail where they present a danger because they do move, okay? And nobody knows if they should be on the trail or they should not be on that trail, which is built for pedestrians and for bicycles. So you're going to have a big problem. Electric assisted bikes, and they make them mountain bikes too, so they can go off trail.
So our world is changing. We'll have to see what happens, how it evolves. But any other questions for Wayne? Yeah, I guess Buzz has
I got to tell you, I don't care much about the scooter discussion, but I am interested in the parks being built here. What is the funding source in the county to build that park? It's a regional park, the county will build it, correct?
No, the county won't be building that park. It would be your CSD.
It'll be CSD?
It will be CSD.
Okay, then my next question is, Park is getting ready to dump about 1,000 units, give or take 200, whatever the latest number is. In the middle of this area, he brings up the figure that you're ignoring this if you don't take some good action to reserve some recreational property in the middle, in the heart of El Dorado Hills. And you can do what you want, but the point is, even that is if you're allowing Parker to come in and build that kind of number of units that add to this, what are they doing that will equalize the burden on the recreational facilities of CSP? I don't see it. That's there to accommodate primarily
That's in the development agreement discussion, and the CSD has a proposal.
So why don't the park build it, or at least build the majority of it? So why are we concerned about funding, Wayne? I mean, it sounds like, from what I heard, you didn't have much of an idea about where the money's going to come from.
Well, for the 12 and a half acres, yes, I know where most of that.
But how many acres are there?
210.
200 acres, you know where you're going to build 12 and a half acres on that?
Initially, yes. None of our parks, Buzz, get built
What
all at once. The trick is
going to be
to,
used to develop the other 200 acres.
the trick is to,
Carter's got his houses built. We don't have a park. We've got another couple thousand kids to accommodate. We don't have anything in the heart of El Dorado Hills, and we're supposed to say thank you very much.
Well, part of that's development fees. I mean, that's a long discussion. We're really talking about all the different revenue sources.
Yeah, but I'm just raising it, the point, not necessarily for a detailed discussion on it, but I think that our county and our CSD representatives, if they're not paying attention to that, are not doing what they're supposed to be doing and what we ask them to do.
okay, I do know that they are paying very close attention to the central specific plan proposal, and they're involved with that. But it's been a tough negotiation to get past the 15 acres that Parker already offered. And frankly, if we don't acquire the land, even if we don't have the funds to do anything with it right away, then that's lost forever. So hopefully the district is continuing to fight to get 15 or more. I'd love to see twice that much in there.
But are you gonna have a tax assessment across the district to build this park?
Not without a vote. Not without a vote.
Yeah.
But there's several ballot measures been talked about, bond assessments, those kinds of things. I don't know the specifics of what the CSD is looking at, but they are looking at, as they have in the past, some kind of a bond measure, as I understand it, to raise funds for some of the parks development. But I'm not sure exactly what's been targeted. That hasn't been described, whether it's general or whether it's specific for something like this regional park. I think we all have to wait until the discussion really happens and becomes public about what is that in that bond measure. School districts are going out for bond measures, the county's going out for tax assessments, everybody's asking for more revenue. So the timing is difficult, whether you're talking March or November of next year for all of these. But
I'd only close in saying that as these discussions happen, you need to be there sharing those kinds of thoughts with the decision makers that are going to be doing that process. And I suspect over the next year, the CSD is going to be talking about a bond that they'll need public input.
And there's a meeting to talk about the park development here on the 13th, right?
yes,
Yeah.
the APAC meeting, yes.
And then a county, is it a planning commission?
Planning commission meeting on the 14th. Following the way it's currently scheduled, but that's subject to
Tentatively. Yes, tentatively.
Well, it's calendared, it's been announced.
It's on the
so
calendar.
It would have to be, yeah.
We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Right. So we'll cover that separately. So I think we probably need to segue out, but thank you very much for sharing with us.
Thanks, Fred.
Okay, so I'm going to move on with three very quick items relative to supervisory communications. I think most of us are aware of the vigils that have been conducted in various parts of this county. There was one in Placerville, and this is for our deputy who was lost in the line of duty, shot and killed in the line of duty, Deputy Ishmael, Brian Ishmael. But there was a vigil that was done in Placerville. There was a vigil done in Town Center. There's been a recognition that was done in Lakeview School. There's been other things that go on in the county to widely recognize and respect what it's like to be in law enforcement, and the fact that nobody likes to see fatality in action where people are actually serving the community. And there's more and more coming out on the details of that storyline. I'm not going to get into that, but you kind of look at and understand what happened and say, why did this happen? Because one person who reported it wasn't honest about what our law enforcement officers were walking into. So it's kind of like a surprise, right? It wasn't an ambush per se, but it's pretty darn close to it. So those are the things you always have to be guarded about and try to make sure that people recognize that that's, as I understand why the person who made the 911 call is being charged, presumably with manslaughter charges. So they're trying to hold that individual accountable for not telling the officers on the 911 call what the real situation was. So there's going to be more to come. But the main thing I wanted to make sure everybody understood is there is a memorial service tomorrow. It's held over in Roseville. So tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the Bayside Church, 6401 Stanford Ranch Road. There is the service itself, and then there's going to be a procession that comes back from there into El Dorado County. So if you're interested in attending that, if you're able to attend that, just be aware that there's a number of things planned that they're going to discuss, but that procession is going to obviously occupy a lot of time, and it's going to take up roadways and stuff, so a lot of our traffic is going to be impacted from the progression coming out of Roseville all the way back up to the county offices, as I understand.
Do we know what the route is through El Dorado County?
There is a map that's shown on the distribution that they put out, so I have a map of it. I can't quote exactly what it is, but there is a map available. So,
And I heard it was going to be a horse-drawn. Is it a horse-drawn?
In Placerville.
Just in Placerville.
yeah, I think the procession, or whatever you want to call it, from Roseville is all automobiles and stuff, and I'm sure they have it in motorcycles. But once they get to Placerville, that changes. So I just want to make people aware of that. If you have the opportunity, please attend, or at least contribute to the donations that they're asking for. There's a number of really good things that are happening there. There's an organization that stepped up and offered to pay for the mortgage payments on the house that the officer was in, so that hopefully is gonna be taken care of. The sheriff's department's got other things they're doing. They're looking at being able to have officers transfer their vacation time or donate their vacation time to that deputy so that they can continue the health care coverage for the family under COBRA extension. So, I mean, we're really pulling out all the stops to try to find ways to help the family as much as possible, but anything you can do personally would be greatly appreciated. So, you have a comment, Jim?
Yeah, they're coming up Highway 50, right?
Yeah. Part of it's through Highway 50, yes.
And do you know what time?
Well, the service starts at 10. I think it's supposed to last about an hour and a half to 11:30ish. So the procession would start shortly after that. And I don't think they're expected to end the whole thing until about 2 o'clock. Did you have to bring the...
I have it right here, John.
Okay.
The sheriff's department says that they're leaving 12:15 from the Roseville area.
12:15.
And they're expected to arrive Placerville after 1. They're coming up Highway 50 off Hazel through El Dorado County. They'll be exiting on Canal Street to Placerville and down the main street to the bell tower.
Okay, thanks.
So thank you, Chief Lloyd, for that. So again, just to encourage everybody to put forward the recognition you can, and if you're able to attend the services, I think that would be greatly appreciated by all. The second item I wanted to talk about a little bit was the PG&E PSBS impacts. We all know that there's been multiple power outages. I was personally affected on the first of the 4 outages. El Dorado County was affected by all 4 in terms of our offices. And so when the first one happened, we got involved with trying to determine what is the cost to the county only, in terms of lost services, lost time, lost productivity, whatever you call it. And the number I've gotten back is it's $80,000 per day that the county's without power. That's just a loss. Because you send employees home, but they don't have power at home to do anything either. So they can't work off their laptops or whatever. Puts a backlog into things. So there's a lot of things that are backing up in terms of the progression. $80,000 a day, and I think there was something like a total of 10 days or more that the county. So we're almost at $1 million of impact just from the direct cost of that to the county. That doesn't include any businesses or anything else. So we have talked about submitting a claim. A number of other counties have done that to PG&E for the loss of that productivity due to the PSBS, because the winds, at least in Placerville, to my knowledge, in Placerville Central, not the outer parts of the county, never got to the point of severity that would justify a power shutdown. Yet the county services were down for all those days. So we're trying to capture that. There's going to be a lot of discussion. I'm sure you've all heard and seen in the newspapers and on radio and stuff what the governor's position is and some of the things he's talking about right now. I'm not going to get into those, but there's certainly a crisis going on relative to rural counties in particular, but also a lot of populated coastal counties, like Marin County, that got hammered by the power shutoffs as well. That impact is huge, and I think the whole system is stressed now in terms of, is this our new norm, and we're going to look at this for the next 10 years until PG&E, if they come out of bankruptcy, accrues enough money to actually put in the switching devices and stuff it takes to be able to isolate those parts of their grids where they're the high-risk areas versus the low-risk areas on that same grid, those kinds of things. There's a lot of discussion. Nothing has really happened yet, but it will, I'm sure. And so our position from the county is to work with the agency, CSAC, which is all 58 counties belong to CSAC, the California State Association of Counties is what CSAC stands for. And then we also work with RCRC, which is our Rural Counties Organization, of which there are 38 counties in RCRC. So those 2 organizations are who we work with to submit our data to, but then we're also submitting, for instance, the impact, the $80,000 per day is going to our assemblymen and our state senator, so they have a clear understanding of what those direct impact and costs are for county services. So that's our start. It isn't over. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more to read about in the newspapers and stuff, but it truly is a crisis, in my opinion, in terms of everything it affects. So, yeah, Wayne.
Has there been any discussion started on acquiring the infrastructure of PG&E and becoming a public utility of your own? The CSD has the right to do that.
Right.
There's a piece of legislation they passed years ago, which I helped them do. But you read in the paper that like Rockland and a few others are trying to, up at Gray Eagle, we have a co-op and we get our electricity from PG&E. It went off for about a half hour because they're a cooperative agreement. When they turn it off, Nevada Power sends it over. So yeah, we were out about a half hour. You guys were out for how many days?
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. But PG&E infrastructure, we should start talking about how we can acquire it and become our own utilities, whether it's a countywide or a CSD, but we definitely do need to start some discussions going.
Discussions started over a year ago that I know of in talking about the probability of getting associated with SMUD and doing things to separate ourselves from PG&E. The PG&E infrastructure still has to be there, and the whole situation is making an offer to buy out that infrastructure that PG&E will accept. And even San Francisco made an offer to buy it out, and they said, no, we're not going to sell it because you're trying to, your offer is 1/4 what the value is. So it's like what we faced with EID and trying to look at detaching from EID years ago. When the infrastructure is there and they can put a value on it, you're never going to be able to afford what it is, right? Somebody's got to come in and do appraisal to really understand what is the fair market value of this old antiquated equipment that's out there. Then maybe you can settle on price. So there's a number of things happening there. We've started actually looking at how do we work with SMUD more directly to try to get SMUD power here, because that helps with the cost. It doesn't help with the infrastructure. The infrastructure would have to be replaced. We've also looked at a CCA at the county level. We know what other counties are doing. If CCAs were empowered to acquire the infrastructure from PG&E, that's another avenue that could be pursued. The CSD has it, but I think it's a latent power at this point. They'd have to go back and modify things. But all those things are being considered. And it's not only our communities it's considering, it's a lot of other local jurisdictions that are considering how do we get out of PG&E.
Well, in bankruptcy, PG&E is going to have a big reconstruction, and we should have county council look at how they can become part of that bankruptcy agreement as far as acquiring infrastructure.
Right. But today the governor announced that he wants the state to take it over. That's what he thinks the solution is, and I'm going, oh my God.
The problem is PG&E is too big, and the state's too big to even live.
So some solutions don't make any sense to me, but for other people, they may. But, okay, so I want to move on beyond that. The last thing I wanted to mention is the El Dorado County fire insurance situation with the non-renewals. We had assembly in Kylie's Town Hall up at the Cameron Park Community Services District facility in their auditorium. The insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara, was there. I thought he made a great presentation of the things they're working on. The assemblyman talked about stuff he's working on. There were 3 county supervisors there answering questions primarily of what the things the county was working on. So there is a significant effort going on to try to reverse that trend, where a lot of these insurance companies can just pick a zip code and say, okay, we're not going to renew any policies in this zip code because it's too high a risk for us. Without any inspections, without any standard criteria, et cetera, that's the way they're allowed to operate. And right now, those non-renewal notices have a 45-day provision in them. That's changed recently, as I understand it. It's now extended out to, I think it's 90 days. But, you know, that helps, but it doesn't solve the problem. So I would advise any of you who are concerned that you may not get renewal of your current fire insurance policy, even in El Dorado Hills, because I would advise personally by a broker in El Dorado County, because I live out in Lake Hills and we have a wildland interface there, that the insurance company I had, a 99% probability they're not going to renew my policy. So I reached out to the broker and started looking at what are my alternatives, and I was given a quotation for the FAIR plan, combined with a wraparound through another agency, which basically triples what I'm currently paying for my insurance premium. And I've heard all those kinds of things, all the way up to 10 times current insurance premium policies to get through the FAIR plan for the coverage of the fire and then have your wraparound coverage on top of it. So that's a huge impact to a lot of people. And what did we do to deserve that? Right? So we've had some fires in California. Yeah, well, and there's a number of reasons why we have fires in California too. The chief could probably tell us his opinion of it. The Forestry Service would have a different opinion of it, but those problems aren't going to be solved overnight. Vegetation management stuff is going to make a huge difference. And what we're doing with county vegetation management ordinance provision over a course of 3 to 5 years, you'll see that it's a significant difference. But it's not like a light switch, you can turn it on and the problem solved. It isn't going to happen that way. So I think we are going to get better standards, we're going to get better regulation, but you know, a lot of that is just out of our control. It's the insurance commissioner and the committee, the insurance committee, I guess it is, that administers things that can persuade and change what's going on there. So like the CPUC is with PG&E, there's an administrative body that's supposed to do regulation and controls and stuff, but it doesn't seem like it's working the way it should. So I'll leave it at that. There's a lot of things that we can spend time beyond that, but any general questions on any of that I've discussed or anything that's a burning question before we move on? Okay, thank you. It's fire season. It was intentional, burning question. So I'm going to start. We're going to go through our leadership team progress reports. And since we have our CHP representative, is it Brett?
Andrew.
Andrew.
Close.
Okay. Close, almost.
Some years behind.
All right. So would you please share with us the report that you can from standpoint of what's going on, from standpoint of motor vehicle enforcement and other things in the Eldorado Hills area?
Thank you again. From our last meeting, we were talking about beginning of school woes and troubles and tribulations and stresses that go along with dropping kids off at schools. That has tapered down. So, as we can expect with pretty much any school year, those things come and go. This last week, we crested 28 fatal traffic collisions in our county, or on the western slope of our county, and 30 persons deceased on roadways, on public roadways, in the western slope, and that's classified area CHP. We're far, far, far and above last year's numbers and the years before that. So we're taking aggressive approaches. With those approaches, we're just like I mentioned before, multimodal. We're attacking it from different angles through enforcement, through education programs, and grant-funded enforcement operations that we have coming up in the future. The grant cycle is funny. It doesn't align with the state fiscal year nor the federal fiscal year. So we're just getting going on those grants. We're still waiting approval on the enforcement grants from our Assistant Commissioner Field, and then we'll get rolling out on those in the future. But I don't want to steal any of the firefighters' thunder, but fire season is still here. We have mid to high 70s going on every single day, and a future 10-day forecast. So just today we had a vehicle sparking multiple chain of fires along I-80 in the Auburn area right next to the CHP office in Newcastle. Just a reminder, when you're towing trailers, or if you see a trailer dragging a chain, you can call 911 to report that right away. And when you're attaching your own safety chains to your trailer, it's 2 chains, remember? And then cross them underneath your trailer, get them twisted up so that they're tight. Let's not lead to that big one up here in Pollock Pines or even around here in Dorado Hills. It's still kind of urban wildland area. So snow is coming as well. Our next meeting is December. Knock on wood, hopefully we'll have snow by then. And just remember, take it easy when you're going up to Tahoe. Check. Caltrans Quick Maps is the #1 place to get your info. A lot of people are still using the 511 number, or Caltrans still has on their website system an outdated map system. Technically, it's not outdated, it's just slow. Slower in updating chain control locations. So go to Quick Maps or just Google Caltrans Quick Maps, and they'll keep you updated as quickly as possible on chain controls and things like that. Share it with your friends, please. Don't rely on our social media or anyone else's social media to get out there and get you that information right away. Go to the single source of information, and that is Caltrans Quick Maps. So, any questions or any concerns for me? We'll make it quick based on busy day tomorrow.
Yeah, just a quick one, because I work over here or volunteer over here at the Welcome Center, and often the question comes up about accessibility of roads, especially to Tahoe, and I refer people to the Caltrans Road Information number. Is that, do you know, is that still an accurate number to call, either on the website or to call the number?
It's going to be delayed about 10 to 15 minutes. 10 to 15 minutes in Highway 50 terms is a lifetime. So, no. Caltrans Quick Maps, and that's the only thing I'm going to sell you when it comes to roadway updates and chain control locations, activations, or deactivations, or even avalanche controls. Caltrans Quick Maps, that's it.
Thank you.
That's where you should go.
Is that an app or is that actually a website you guys do?
Both.
Okay.
It is both.
Okay.
Yeah. And lots of other counties tap into it. For example, Sonoma County during their recent things, I discovered that they have their county maps that also tap into Caltrans Quick Maps. You can go to one location on their county website, see the evacuation zones and where CHP incidents are located. So it even has our incidents that are located on there, and you can click on it and get a show somewhere if it's a public incident.
Any other questions, concerns, gripes?
All right, you've done an excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew.
Yes, it's Andrew. Okay. Let's see if I'm just reading it. Okay, Andrew. All right. So with that, is anybody here from our sheriff's department?
Shannon's here, probation.
Probation. Shannon, would you like to report on something related to probation or the sheriff's department?
Well, I do know this,
Please come to the microphone so we can all hear you, because I know John has a
Okay.
tough time sometimes, but if you speak, that would help on the microphone.
Sure. This Saturday for Deputy Ishmael, there is going to be a softball tournament at Lions Park up in Placerville. And there's about 20 law enforcement agencies that are going to be in a tournament. And anybody who wants to come out, there's going to be raffles and food and stuff, and all the proceeds go to his family. And that's this Saturday. For probation, we saw plenty of people on probation. But we're still supervising them, so about it.
And our juvenile treatment facility only is now Tahoe operated, so that's created a lot of difficulties with staff and everything else, but
Yes, our juvenile hall closed down on June 30th up in Placerville. And so now we have our juvenile treatment center, which is up in Tahoe. So if there are any minors or juveniles that need to be arrested down here on the West Slope, they actually have to be transported all the way up to Tahoe. Court is still here down in Placerville, so we're transporting minors back and forth to Placerville for court. So it's put a lot of additional duties to our officers in transportation and whatnot, and a lot of our officers used to live on the West Slope and now they're commuting up to Tahoe.
that's not permanent. There's a plan to basically build a new facility in Placerville and eventually move the juveniles back to Placerville, but it's several years out. So I don't know what they've been telling you, but my guess is 2 to 3 years minimum.
That's what we're hearing.
Yeah, so it's going to be a while. So we're asking the staff to please try to bear with it. I know it's difficult on families and people when they have to do a lot of traveling just to get to the workplace, but it isn't permanent, I guess is the answer. So we try to do the best we can.
But it's supposed to go where the sheriff's office is.
Right.
The old sheriff's office.
Right.
So they're out. So that's
After that building gets raised and removed, we're going to tear it all down and start over. But that would be the site that the new structure. And we got grant monies. I think it's from the state. It could be the feds, but I think it's from the state to the tune of what was it, 10 million or something. So there's money like that to actually build a new facility. But there's also requirements that go with it, right? There's always strings. You have to meet the strings in terms of how long it's there, et cetera, et cetera. But that's the current plan, is to build a new facility with those monies and additional monies the county would have to come up with out of capital reserves and get it done. So, well, thank you for your report. Appreciate it. Any questions for Shannon? Okay, seeing none. Then let's go on to our fire service report.
Yeah, as was mentioned earlier, it's a dry November. As we know, there's no rain in the forecast, at least for the next 14 days that I was seeing. So still very high fire risk, still a lot of fires burning in the state. Our department, the Dorado Hills Fire Department, we had a total of 9 personnel, 2 engine companies and the chief officer out in Sonoma County at the Kincaid Fire. Currently a little over 77,500 acres. It's upwards of 80% contained, so it's looking good. We currently still have 5 employees still there assigned. They were on shift today, and we're hoping to see them back here in the next couple days. So it's interesting to be in November and still have strike teams deployed out. So it's a sign of the dryness that we're having. The other thing to let you know about, the Santa Run is coming up next month, December 10th through the 13th. We'll be posting banners out. We'll have the routes out. They're on our website now, edhfire.com. But that's a great event. We look forward to doing that for the community, and it's a good time. We also collect food and toys. So that's the core mission of the Santa Run, is actually to collect toys for the kids. We partner with the local community, and it's a great event. So we're looking forward to that, and that's all I have.
And traditional November 1st used to be the start of the burn season without a burn permit, but I'm sure that's been discontinued, so we'll have to wait until, I guess, CAL FIRE announces that it's safe to do outdoor burning after we get some rains and all that stuff, and that could be into December. Hopefully we get snow and rain, but who knows. So, yeah, for anybody tempted to try to burn something outdoors, don't. Please don't. It's not a traditional year. And if you follow the rules and stuff, CAL FIRE will tell you you're not allowed to do burns, but. Okay, yeah.
Thank you in advance for the Santa Run.
No, thank you.
At the mobile
That's a
park,
great event.
everybody loves it.
I want to know if Mrs. Santa's going to be on the engine this year.
Mrs. Santa's going to be on the end.
You mean as opposed to running along behind? Is that Let me on!
I will say the elves work very hard.
Yes.
Very hard.
Oh, I'm telling you, those elves are something else.
Yeah, so this will be my 25th year enjoying that, so thank you again in advance.
And I think it's like a 40-year tradition, if I remember right. 50 years, is that what it is now? 55. So it's been going on a long time, and it's always been celebrated and enjoyed by the residents of El Dorado Hills. So thanks to the fire department for keeping that going. It's difficult to keep those programs going, but thank you, because I know the community really enjoys it. So, all right. So with that, why don't we just move to John and down this way relative to. So we'll be picking up the APAC.
Awesome.
Summary.
So, APAC, our meeting this month is next Wednesday, the 13th, 7 p.m. in this room. It's a very limited agenda. Supervisor Heidel will address us before we get.
Actually, I'm going to be gone on vacation. I want to let you know that, so I'm not going to be there.
The entire agenda.
Our planning commissioner will be there. So he's the guy you really want to hear from.
Okay. Well, then maybe we'll stop John for John and
there you go.
And then at the end of our meeting, we have some housekeeping to do. We have our slate of our nominees for our officers for 2020. But the only project on our agenda is the Central El Dorado Hills Specific Plan. And, it's been a contentious project for many years, dating back, I believe, 2012. There's been changes. We haven't seen any response from the draft environmental impact report since 2016. The final came out. It was posted to the county website on Friday. We have a lot of APAC members that are now reading thousands of pages of documents to see what the response were to. Well, one, to see what the responses were from the community, and then what the responses are from the document, from the final environmental impact report. Unique this time is that there's a development agreement that's being negotiated. It's a draft development agreement between the applicant and the county, and we actually see that this time, and that's not the usual process. We usually don't see that until it's sort of almost approved or after it's approved, or sometimes not at all. So it's unique in this time in that the title, it's not a development agreement, it's a community benefit and development agreement. So as we're looking at it as APAC members, the first thing we're trying to find is, well, what is community? Because the impact's here. This is El Dorado Hills, and you would think that's the community benefit, but there's a lot in there for the county overall. There were a lot of participation in the development agreement this time from different departments and agencies at the county, where in the past it was really only between the planning department director and an applicant. So a little different dynamic this time. It is contentious. Some people like it, some people don't. There was an advisory vote on it in 2015, and 91% of people, the residents in El Dorado Hills, said they'd rather see that remain open space. However, 91% of the people don't own it. So there's some potential for some conflict, there's questions. Park Development has agreed to come and present the project. So we're really just going to step back, let them do their show. There'll be questions to answer afterward. The Planning Commission will be receiving their first public hearing on the project the day after our meeting, which is problematic for us. In order to submit public comment, we've only had the document for basically a week, or less than a week by the time it comes up. So there'll be another Planning Commission hearing right now, tentatively scheduled for December. We've evaluated whether or not we could get another APAC meeting in advance of that, where maybe we get our subcommittee report in, we'll vote on our findings, make a recommendation so that the Planning Commission, the Planning Department, the applicant have an adequate time to respond to our concerns, our questions, or what our position is. Unfortunately, that second Planning Commission meeting is the day after our December meeting, so that's not adequate time. We've looked at securing another room and maybe having our meeting the week before. It's tough. It's the holiday seasons, and it's hard to get a room that would be adequate for the public response we anticipate. To quickly go into this, we could go back and look at what the 2013 proposal was, but basically around 1,000 homes on the old golf course, and then that's Dorado West Side, then across the way here on Wilson, across from the fire station, the Pedrigal So it's been downsized a little bit. We won't get into the details tonight because that's what Wednesday's for. But the proposed entitlement requests from the original application were an amendment to the 1988 Dorado Hills specific plan. Basically, they're moving a couple of the lots out of Village D into this new plan. So they're taking out Serrano, the Dorado Hills specific plan, moving into this new specific plan. It's a rezone of the open space. A general plan amendment is required, and a brand new specific plan for the central Dorado Hills for their plan area. It's a lot to look at. We're struggling right now just starting. I think I'm a couple, maybe 300 pages into the final environmental impact report. There's about 3,000 pages total. The final, I think, is 13, I can't remember, it's like 1,300 pages for the final. So, and when you're looking at it, they're going back and forth. You look at the response, you go, oh, hey, what was that question? Now you gotta go back to 2016 and look what the question was. So, anybody who wants to help out, if you have a concern, if you love this plan, if you hate this plan, regardless, we need to be looking at it in a factual manner. Emotion doesn't sway the decision makers. In fact, I think it closes ears. So we want to be responsible, we want to be thoughtful and thorough and provide an adequate response from the community. Anybody who wants to help, please. Our email addresses are on our agenda. You can go to our website. There's a contact us form on our edhapac.org. Anybody wants to be involved, send in an email or see me afterwards, and we'll just start writing down names. But we need help to do it, and a side benefit is that if you participate in a project review, a project study, you're an APAC voting member. For life, we got you. So it's going to be, it'll be a long couple months, we'll say. And so we're looking forward to having a respectful conversation Wednesday, and hopefully we'll have another one in December. And with that,
7 p.m.
7 p.m. this building. I need to email Wayne too, by the way.
Again, John, I encourage the board to unanimously support Frenzen's motion to move this until after the first of the year, because for the same reason you just said it, we need more time, but we also need it to be down here where we can get more public participation during the evening hours when people are off work and can come to it. And again, that was 92% of the elections.
Yes, 91 point. Yeah, thank you.
So from a continuity perspective, I'd like to go to John Bania, because he's on the Planning Commission, and they've had a lot of discussions about when to hold the meetings. Do they have enough time? How do you review this? Staff's got major commitment of trying to get things done. So John, why don't you give it from your perspective, and then I'm going to go back and answer a little bit of the development agreement questions that came out earlier in terms of what's in it for the community. So
we have been talking to staff for a while, and I know APAC as well, to get more than 2 weeks to look at this. So I know APAC's doing their best. I'm trying to do my best as well. Supervisor Frenzen has put something on the agenda tomorrow at the board, and I've talked to a couple of board members myself, and politely reminding them that we have our rules, they have their rules. So we encourage their suggestions to us, and we'll have to see how that plays out. And I think we're all in general agreement it would be good to have some more time. So I've talked to the chairman of the Planning Commission, and we'll see how it plays out tomorrow. But I wouldn't be surprised if we have some sort of polling of the commissioners, in respect to the suggestions that Supervisor Frenzen has mentioned about, which are good suggestions. I've been asking for more time. APAC is as well, because and I think it's going to make for an overall better result. I won't say project. I'll say result. So, because the more public participation you have, the better situation you're going to end up with. So we'll see how that plays out. And so I look forward to some good input from the Board of Supervisors tomorrow. I don't want to get too much into the weeds unless you guys have any specific questions. I've got certain opinions. At this point, I'm going to hold them to myself because I'm going through my iterative process, reviewing the stuff and talking to various staff members and council and so forth as well. So. Did you want me to address the other infrastructure stuff?
While you're on it, why don't you cover that too? Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to Rafael Martinez this morning. He gave me an update on the connection from Saratoga to Iron Point, as well as Wilson coming down the hill and connecting to Saratoga. We all see it's paved, but they still got some work to do to get it ready to open that up to traffic, and so it should be occurring late December or early January. So that's good.
Yeah, if we get it open before the end of the year, that would be better. I mean, we were all hoping the end of October, November, but things change with time, so.
Right. And we had a busy planning commission meeting last Thursday, and so the Serrano J7 was approved. We had some good, lively discussion concerning that, in particular, Bass Lake Road. And also the Vineyards project was approved as well, specifically. And the El Dorado Hills Folsom storage facility on Green Valley Road, right at the county line, was approved also. So, any questions or anything, comments? Thank you.
So let me have it back and I'll just address the development agreement and then we'll switch gears here. So one of the provisions of the development agreement, which is now up for public review, and this is a draft development agreement, it's not cast in concrete, it's what's come out of our negotiating team at the county with the developer in terms of what they think is the fair community benefit portion of this. So right now what's been identified is a $6,000 per unit community benefit that would go to El Dorado County, and then the county would determine how that $6,000 per unit would be used for community benefit purposes, whether it's road expansion, whether it's more parks and recreation, whatever it is. So that's the part that's currently in development agreement. The CSD had previously submitted a proposal to the development agreement team that the CSD would like to receive half of that amount, $3,000 per unit, for purposes of developing parks locally. That didn't come out as the final version of the development agreement, but I think it's open to discussion. And that's really what the Planning Commission is expected to do, is to listen to all of the inputs, listen to all the arguments, and then determine what they think is the best balance of all those things to recommend to the Board of Supervisors. So it gets very personal when you start talking about where the money is going to go and how it's going to be spent. I've already voiced my interest in ensuring that a major part of that money that comes to the county out of this development agreement would go towards local improvements in El Dorado Hills and not just go up to Placerville into a general fund. But I have one vote of 5. But I would like to see a major part of it, for instance, stay within Tim Fee Zone 8 and be used for what I would hope would be road maintenance and other improvements that we desperately need in a number of areas that are behind the times and need to be brought up. But $6,000 a unit doesn't go a tremendous way when you talk about all the backlog projects we have that are on our CIP list that need funding. But I'm going to propose when we get to that point that a certain amount of those proceeds be retained within the local area as opposed to just going to the county, kind of get blended with all the other general fund money. I don't know if I'll be successful in that, but that's my personal goal. So more to come on it, more discussion. Nothing's locked in concrete yet. So please come forward, express yourself. Give us your recommendations on what you think should be done with that money. For instance, one of the asks that Associated Development Agreement will also read is our planning and building department, basically it's mostly planning with respect to affordable housing provisions, had asked for $500 per unit to be contributed to the county for the affordable housing account that we have. And that came directly from the planning department. It wasn't part of the negotiation. That was their ask. That's in the development agreement today. So that could also be changed, but that's where it stands right now, that there will be a provision for a small amount of funds to go into the affordable housing account to help promote affordable housing within the region. So there's those kinds of things, and there's a lot of details in the development agreement. You really have to take some time and try to absorb all of it. But those are just two of the major pieces of it, I think, from the county's perspective. There's other things in there. Yeah. And I'm sure Parker will probably discuss that at your APAC meeting in some detail.
John, I want to add a couple more things.
Yeah, sure. Here.
That's okay. When it comes to the CSD, we talked about parks, we talked about the old golf course and so forth. We're looking for comments, and they've been provided from the CSD. So you should be talking to the CSD. I don't know if that's in the attachments. I can't recall. Is that? I saw a copy separately of it from the CSD,
Was
but I don't know
it in
if that.
Legistar?
Yeah, I don't know if that, have you seen that in Legistar?
I've read so much I don't really know.
Yeah, I know.
It's in the draft, it's in the final EIR.
Is it?
There were comments made by the CSD and the responses in the.
That's consistent with the latest that we got from the CSD. Okay, very good. So those directions or those comments and concerns should be directed at the CSD because they've taken a certain approach, which is, up for discussion, and that'll be part of the overall discussions concerning that. I wanted to also provide some clarity in respect to the approach, just so people understand how this is playing out. They are presenting this as a large lot tentative map. I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but it's a phased map, okay? So what you will not see is you will not see individual tentative maps for each site, for each phase. So as a result, you will not see conditions of approval that you would normally see from the county. So I'm trying to get my mind and my arms around that. And so that adds to the complexity because so we don't have any specificity in respect to how exactly each phase is going to develop out. They provide general information in respect to roads and where they're going to go and what the general widths are going to be and so forth and so on, and estimates about the number of lots. So I wanted to tell that to you for your benefit, for you to be thinking along those lines. So that's the approach that Parker Development and their submittal. So but what they're requesting is a general plan amendment as part of this, or what we would generally call their entitlements. A general plan amendment, a specific plan amendment, a rezone, am I missing something?
And a new specific plan, and a PD.
And PD. So if this project is approved, the way it's going to play out is that they would get their entitlements, and then they would come back later and do each phase. And then you would have conditions of approval associated with each phase. But again, if it's approved as is, then they would have all of their entitlements already. So, so something to think about and consider, as you come forth and study this yourself and provide public testimony concerning that. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and my last 2 cents on it is, because it is a large lot and those conditions aren't there, and they will be, negotiated at the time when they're doing the phasing or tentative maps for subdivisions, as they occur, it's a 20-year development agreement. So institutional memory, community memory, in 20 years might not be what it is in 2019 or 2020. And that's why
I have a question. Will there have to be a general vote on all of these changes? Does it go out to the public for a vote?
Ultimately, it goes to the planning commission with a recommendation of the board, and then the board will make the final determination. It's like any other major land use development project. So
What I do like is the draft development agreement being included as part of that because we can provide comments on that. Because a lot of times we don't have a voice in that. And I think it's hand in hand with this development, with that development agreement, as well as the overall project. So I think it's a great step.
Tim had a question too. I want to catch him, John, before we come back.
Yeah, Tim.
Yeah, I guess it's a comment or a question. I know what John said about the large lot. This is going to be a game changer for El Dorado Hills. Like it or not, it's going to be a game changer, whatever happens. For the developer to come in and say, I just want to give you guys a 25,000 foot level. I want to get my entitlements, and then as I start doing phasing, do this development or that development, I'll then get to the details, and then it'll be the conditions of approval. That is, in my mind, not smart planning. It's a disservice to the community of El Dorado Hills. I want to see the whole project now. I think as residents we deserve that. And a final comment, because I know I'll be sitting up at the table next week, and I'll finish reading the documents by then. But on that development agreement, the community benefit fee of $6,000. I know that's sort of a negotiated set number right now, but when I think of community, I don't really think the community that's going to be affected is Placerville, Shingle Springs, Pool, or anywhere else. It's the community of El Dorado Hills. If that's a community benefit fee, then that fee, the vast majority of it, like you said, Supervisor, Whether it's 3,000 goes to the CSD, whether 2,000 of that goes to the roads here, the vast majority of that money should stay in El Dorado Hills, because it's the residents of El Dorado Hills that are going to bear the burden of construction for 10 years. We're going to have noise, we're going to have road closure, we're going to have those damn dump trucks and everything else going back and forth. The traffic is, at least initially at least, during construction is going to be just hell. And we all know it, because it's all going to come out on El Dorado Hills Boulevard. And I don't care what all those 100 pages of traffic studies says. Anytime they start doing that, we are going to be not in condition, traffic condition F, we're going to be in Z. So let's, I wish everyone, and John vaguely mentioned this, but we can come to the APAC meeting, but it's the seats, the fannies in the seats, wherever the hearing is, whether it's in Placerville, you got to go there, because the board of supervisors are affected by people there when they show up. And you typically have, I think for Vineyards, it was one person from El Dorado Hills who came to speak on it. That's one. So maybe the planning commission would say, the people don't care. Well, I know they care, but people are working. They're taking care of their kids. They're taking care of their parents, perhaps. They're going down to Sacramento or wherever they go to work. I think that it is important to have one of those meetings here. But if not, then, John Hassler, you guys, you got to get a damn bus. Go to Four Seasons, give them coffee, get them on the bus, and take them up to Placerville and get 40 or 50 of your residents in the seats.
Well, I used to work in the wine business. We'll go even one better. Give them some wine. They'll
I'll get on that bus with you.
Okay, so,
I just have one other comment, John. I can't understand why in this thing it's called an agreement. Okay, because when I hear the word agreement, that's something that's agreed upon. Okay, I don't think any of these things in this is really an agreement.
It's a draft.
Then take the word agreement out of that and call it discussions, call it a draft, but don't call it an agreement, because once I hear the word agreement, I say, oh, somebody agreed to it.
If you look at that state nomenclature associated with this, it's called a development agreement. I mean, that's what the law.
Well, take the word agreement out.
Yeah.
And I'm very serious.
Ultimately, it will end up being an agreement if it goes forward. But right now it's drafted, it's fluid, so it can change. That's why we need the public input.
So you take the word agreement out, you put the word draft in, or discussions, okay? Not agreement.
I hear your comment.
All right.
I don't necessarily think it's consistent with state law, but okay. So I would be remiss if I didn't recognize that we do have a director from our El Dorado Community Services District here tonight. Alan Priest is with us. So Alan obviously has been wrestling on the CSD board with what's fair relative to the Central El Dorado Hills project from a Parks and Recreation perspective and stuff. I don't know if you want to make any comments at this point, but I did want to recognize you were in the audience. So our CSD board cares. That's why they're here, right?
Absolutely. There's no doubt that we paid attention to this when it first came out. The concept of the plan itself, the draft EIR, we made substantial comments to it. We paid $40,000+ for Measure E to see what the community thought. It came out of our general fund. All of us taxpayers chipped in for that, just to understand where this community was on this particular project. 91+% said we'd like to see it remain as is. Our board position, it continues to be, we would like to see it as open space and parks. We went through a process of appraisal and looked hard at it as an organization to buy it, and we couldn't make it work financially. We just couldn't fundamentally make it work. And we didn't have a willing seller. You gotta have one of those in any good real estate transaction. So recently, we appreciate the county. This is the first time we have been at the table for development agreement conversations. And we've been participating for a good 2 years in these conversations, on and off. Sometimes we haven't been at the table and decisions have been made. There is a memo that came from our board from 2 meetings ago that is now published, and it's out there. This is our position. We would like to see, as Tim said, a vast majority of the money if this project goes forward, a vast majority of the money stay in El Dorado Hills where the impacts are. And specifically to the parks and recreation facilities and open space that we're continuing to try and fund and pay for. So that's our position. We're not in favor of this particular project, as well as the transfer tax. That's one thing we haven't talked about tonight. There's also a transfer tax. Every time a home is sold the second time or beyond, there's a 0.25% transfer tax that will be levied against it for another community benefit. And right now, the draft development agreement says that community benefit goes to Placerville to be dictated and spent by the board of supervisors. And we, as the CSD, feel like it should stay here in our community for roads, as John said, for roads and for parks, and it should go into an endowment. That's what we propose, that it should stay here and be dictated by our community and our constituents on what we do with this. And the draft development, or the development agreement as it sits right now, it goes up to Placerville. We have an issue with that as a board. So there's a number of parts and pieces to this that we just don't agree with. Thank you, John, for the opportunity to kind of speak to it a little bit. I can't speak to the entire board. I'm just giving you our position as we have formally come out with it. We all have, we're all community members and neighbors here, and we all have our opinions on this project. But as a board, formally, we are not for this project, and we have a certain conditions we'd like to see.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Alan. I think it's time to move on, so I'm going to give the microphone to Richard, and we'll pick it up with good governance and then proceed down the line here to finish off.
There's been a lot of discussion, so I'll be very brief. John has made me aware of a contract the county is entering into relative to cannabis surveillance. Everybody knows cannabis has a dark history in California and in the county. It's been illegal until the recent passage of state legislation. It has created, I think, a very cloudy environment in terms of the legitimacy and the illegal activity. I think the death of Deputy Ishmael highlights the gray zone that exists. And it was interesting to me as I read different articles how that particular marijuana situation existed, being contracted out of Mexico to create a small growth area on someone's land in the county. I think that the risk of that kind of trying to blend in and lower profile is going to be one of the great risks that law enforcement has and citizens will have if they happen to stumble into the wrong situation on the wrong day and encounter the wrong participants. This surveillance contract allows for satellite imagery being used by a professional organization. It's a 3-year contract, and what it will do is facilitate identification of grow areas and allow for the mapping and gridding of where marijuana grows are. They will have to be of some relative size, but it will allow law enforcement and the zone enforcement people to match between what is permitted and what is not being permitted according to what these maps will show. It should enhance the efficiency of trying to identify and track. And I think maybe a benefit ultimately would be to pre-warn law enforcement as to situations because they'll have better intelligence over what they presently have. And anybody who's flown between Sacramento and Las Vegas and you fly over our county, you know it is pretty darn hard to distinguish anything down below. And a lot of that land is very fertile marijuana growing area. I think this is a very wise and smart move. It looks like using technology to help protect our citizenry and also to maybe create a better basis for this emerging cannabis industry in our county.
Thank you. The opposite of that, of course, is always the big brother concern. They're watching me. In this case, I think it's absolutely essential that this service be provided. So Shannon, do you have a comment or question?
Yes, I do. In addition to that, for the surveillance, in addition to Deputy Ishmael with that, the surveillance, like you said, walking into something blindly, we just had 2 juvenile probation officers go to where there was a marijuana grow. There was 30 pounds of marijuana. A kid was growing it. a kid. We walked into it blindly. And there was ammo there, and all the other stuff that goes there. So it's out there, it's here, and we need it. So
It's a recurring theme, and I think it's only going to grow, unfortunately, as people figure out whether they can or can't get by with this in terms of illegal growth. And that's what this whole thing about legalizing and enforcing it is all about. Because the number one reason I was told that people voted for it on the ballot to legalize the recreational part of the cannabis is because they wanted the enforcement. And without legalizing it, there would be continue to be illegal grows everywhere, where the neighborhoods that are heavily impacted continue to be impacted with no enforcement. Because the history, as I understand it, is in the past when the sheriff has tried to go out, basically address the issue and basically file charges against people, and it gets in court, the district attorney files for it. But unfortunately what happens in most cases is the jury that's selected ends up letting the person off. Because it's a poor person that's disadvantaged and they didn't have a fair shake in life and all of those things, and so they walk. So after the sheriff putting all the time into it, the district attorney putting all the time in it, to have several juries basically let people go, because a lot of people don't feel that illegal growing of cannabis before it was passed as state law was a problem. It was okay, but a lot of people do. And it's those people who are directly affected because they're the neighbors, they're the residents on the street where everybody drives back and forth all the time and creates the dust, and those are where the impacts are. So, it's a difficult situation, but I think with the surveillance and with the current ordinance we have and with the laws that if we are able to enforce them, that we will get a more controlled situation and hopefully eliminate a lot of the illegal stuff and make it purely permitted grows. So yeah.
Back in 07, I used to work with the sheriff's office in the narcotics unit. The sheriff's office actually contracted with BLM and the National Guard, and they would meet at the Sherman Park Airport with their helicopter, and we used to go out and do the surveillance before everything became legal. And that's the way we would be able to eradicate a lot of these growths, was because of the surveillance. That we would go and we would find, and we would pinpoint them, and then after a certain amount of time, then they'd go in and do their, eradication of it.
Very good. So I think it's time to move on again, so I'm going to turn it over to Glenn. Unless there's any other final comments or questions on that? Okay.
Well, thank you all for staying. I see a lot of yawning, getting close to my bedtime as well. CDAC doesn't have anything nearly exciting as APAC and planning has going on with the Central Dorado Hills plan. We did present to the Board of Supervisors at the beginning of last month our annual update. We did not meet because of the power failure in the county in October, so there's not a lot of new things going on in CDAC. We continue to look at 18 to 34-year-olds in our county and trying to find ways to keep them here. Affordable housing, attainable housing, whatever you may call it. A $400,000 to $500,000 starter home now is maybe some of the things people are looking at on a post-size stamp lot. So there are still challenges. We're still trying to educate. I know Supervisor Heidel, I think you have a little bit of an update on the property on White Rock where Oakmont built their assisted living, and they still own a fair amount of acreage, and they're looking at a hotel.
So there's several things that have happened there. Oakmont, which I think a lot of us know, operates the assisted care facility and memory care facility right off of White Rock Road. They purchased property from the Mansour Company. I forget how many acres it is, but it includes a plan they're going forward with now for apartment type of housing. And they originally submitted, in the conceptual review the county went through, is to having that be age restricted, based upon the comments they heard from a number of the supervisors that we need workforce housing and other forms of housing, not just age restricted. It sounds like they're moving forward with changing that age restriction part of it. They still want to build a community that encourages senior living, but they're not going to have it being age restricted per se. So it would accommodate people of different ages, to live in that community, etc. There is associated with that a 250-room hotel and convention center that's been planned. So I think that's a huge amenity to bring to El Dorado Hills, because we'll finally have a sizable hotel and the ability to hold major conferences in this area. Because if you're a businessman in a business park and you're trying to get your vendors in or something or other for a full day briefing about what's out there, and you need a room that'll handle 50, 60 people, where do you do that in El Dorado Hills? You end up going to Folsom or something. So this will provide those kinds of facilities, I think, to keep some of the El Dorado Hills business that's gone to other areas in El Dorado Hills. So I'm actually looking forward to that. And that was actually planned as part of the original project that the Mansur Company brought forth for Town Center West, was to have a hotel convention center in there. It just turns out that Oakmont's purchased the property and they're moving forward with that plan. So my understanding is they were in the office in planning last week submitting an application. Having heard the board's comments on the conceptual review, they are getting on track to make the necessary changes and start the application process and getting things moving, because they have a particular interest, and they also have some contacts within the county that they're trying to bring certain services to El Dorado Hills in the healthcare facility associated with this as well. And I'm going to let them do the announcements on those things, but if that's successful, I think most people will look at it and say, hey, this is a huge benefit as well, that's coming to El Dorado Hills, where right now we don't have those kinds of services. But it is tied kind of with the senior living theme, et cetera, et cetera. So more to come on that. I'm kind of excited about it as it develops, because I see a huge potential there. And I'll tell you, I think from a mitigation standpoint, they've done a tremendous job to try to mitigate the impact of the adjacent neighbors. They put in big buffer zones. They decided they were only going to go 2-story apartment complexes, and most of the property is downslope from where the existing residences are. So I'm sure if you live there, you have a different opinion if it's in your backyard. But the alternative of light industrial and having noisy equipment and stuff without a significant buffer zone, which is allowed right now, the way that thing is zoned, would probably be far worse. So you're always wondering, is this the best we could possibly hope for, or is there something that would be worse if we push this off, maybe something else comes in and you end up with a situation that's less desirable for the community and for local residents. So I think Oakmont is really trying hard, applying for that, but there's still a lot of discussions to go on. They said they'll do a full EIR. So we're all going to get to go through that sequel process again, which APAC loves, right? Well, this time it'll be a draft EIR, and all its cycle starts and stuff. But I think they're doing the project right. I think there's a lot of room for public input and stuff. And I think they do want to listen to everybody and try to fashion and mold their project to be as consistent with the community desires as they can make it.
They've done a lot of outreach already in the community right there adjacent to the property.
Yep.
And the people there, when they were speaking about the age restricted, and they were going to honor the existing setbacks from the industrial, designation of those areas, those are more significant than a residential setback. So they were proposing to keep those setbacks to make it less impact on those residents. Most of them along that buffer seem to be pretty receptive to it. It's better than the plans that have been proposed in the past.
Right. So, one more thing I'll say, having lived here for many years and seen what we've seen through Mansur, the good and the bad, and Parker, Oakmont has kind of a new community developer, even though it's a small parcel. I think it's 40-something acres, and they've built their community. Seems to be a little refreshing what they're bringing to the community. So it may be a nice addition. It's just on a relatively small parcel, but it might be a nice addition there on White Rock.
Okay, let's go ahead and hand it off to Cindy and we'll cover the happenings.
Quickly, yes. Holidays are coming quickly, and a lot of stuff happening at the town center starting November 30th. Photos with Santa over at the California Welcome Center. Horse-drawn carriage rides are starting December 6th, and there are many dates throughout December. At the El Dorado Hills CSD, there's going to be a holiday art and craft fair, which is a neat thing that they have every year. A new thing I saw that they're having in town center that kind of seems like a neat idea to get people to actually into the businesses. They're having something called Elf on the Boulevard scavenger hunt. So all the different businesses are putting hiding the little elves within their businesses, and then the kids can go and try and find these elves, and then they take their little passport when they found them all and take them to facing a book, and they can get a little gift when they complete it, and then they can be entered into a drawing to receive $250 gift cards. So it sounds like a kind of a neat idea to get parents and kids into all the different businesses and have fun doing it, and seeing the new businesses too. Then The town center Christmas tree lightings, December 7th. And Chief Lilly already talked about the center one too, so there's quite a bit coming up. Okay.
I'll add one more. On December 13th, right here at the CSD gym, is the senior center luncheon. That's on Friday. And I believe the Art and Craft Festival was on here at the same time. There was an overlap last year.
It's on the 7th.
It's on the 7th?
6th and 7th.
Oh, so it's a weekend.
Let me have it back on recovery health and communities real quickly. We can wrap that up. For those of you who may not be tracking things, our nomadic shelter group that's centered up in the Placerville area is still looking for volunteers to assist at the Discovery Hills Church in Shingle Springs this Thursday night. They have a training program. They make you very familiar with this, but they're outreaching to all of the faith-based communities and other volunteers that are willing to at least go up and get trained and try to work with that particular need within the community. There are 2 nights in the week that are still, they don't have churches for. They're still looking for churches who are willing to volunteer, but it really is more of a Placerville and Shingle Springs area activity because a lot of the homeless have to be bused or put into a van basically and transported. El Dorado Hills is a little too far away to make all those logistics and timing work out very well. So we're looking for more church support upslope, but that doesn't mean you can't volunteer your time in one of the other churches if you're willing to do that to help out. But they are short 2 nights. The county has been asked to look at buildings that we have available that are either vacant or could be used for this type of a purpose. And there are several of them that have been asked about. There's no decision on any of those things yet. It's something staff is evaluating in terms of viability of some of the things that have been proposed, so I'm not sure where that's going to end up. But that's the healthy communities part of it. So with that, are there any questions or go backs relative to our leadership team, presentation, comments, etc.? Okay, then I want to move to council member items. Number 9, our next meeting is Monday, December the 2nd. And while we don't have a guest speaker, we may have a special presentation by county staff to talk about some of the community planning that's going on. And there was a number of requests for volunteers for that particular duty. With Chief Lilly applied and several other people have applied. So staff is going through and determining what the right mix of people are to serve on that, but they're also trying to identify the community stakeholders to do the outreach to. So that even though we have a team working on it, we want to make sure we outreach to the major stakeholders. So I reached out to APAC to get their inputs, and I think John had submitted me kind of a preliminary. I don't know if that's final or if you've got other thoughts on it.
It might be final.
Okay.
We have to discuss a little more.
Okay, so I have to put my list together too, but they may be present at the December meeting to kind of make a special presentation to make sure we get some form of additional inputs on who we think the stakeholders in the community. So I'll submit mine, we'll submit theirs, but they want to make sure they're inclusive and not forget somebody who's the major stakeholder. So that'll be part of that activity. So with that, unless there's any other go backs, thank you for attending. We'll adjourn the meeting. Appreciate your attendance.